Hercule Poirot's Darkest Hour, the mystery that almost broke him. Chapter 1. The Shadow in the Fog. London, 1929. The city lay shrouded in a fog so thick it seemed to swallow light itself. Street lamps flickered like weary sentinels, their glow barely piercing the grey veil that clung to the cobblestones. Hercule Poirot, wrapped in his heavy overcoat, stepped cautiously along the deserted street, his polished shoes clicking with precise rhythm. His moustache, immaculately groomed despite the damp, twitched as he clutched a crumpled letter in his gloved hand. The letter had arrived that morning, its contents as enigmatic as the fog now enveloping him. Written in a hurried, spidery script, it bore no signature, only a peculiar symbol at the bottom, a broken hourglass, its sand spilling into an inky void. The message was brief but urgent. "A crime is brewing at Harrow House, Monsieur Poirot. Only you can stop it. Come tonight. Trust no one." The address was scrawled beneath. Harrow House, a crumbling relic of wealth on the outskirts of the city. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with curiosity, though a prickle of unease stirred beneath his usual composure. He was no stranger to anonymous summons, but this one carried a weight, a darkness that lingered like the fog. Why him? And why the secrecy? As he approached the wrought-iron gates of Harrow House, their rusted bars looming like skeletal fingers, he paused. The mansion beyond was a shadow in the mist, its windows dark save for a single flickering light on the upper floor. "Mon Dieu, what a place for a mystery!" Poirot murmured, adjusting his hat. He pushed the gate, which creaked mournfully, and stepped onto the gravel path. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere unseen. As he neared the entrance, the massive oak door swung open before he could knock, revealing a frail, white-haired woman in a housekeeper's apron. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted past him into the fog. "You're him, aren't you, Monsieur Poirot?" Her voice trembled barely above a whisper. "Thank God you've come." Poirot inclined his head, his sharp green eyes studying her. "Indeed, I am Hercule Poirot, and you, madame, are—" "Mrs. Tuttle, sir, housekeeper for Lord Harrow." She wrung her hands, her knuckles pale. "I didn't send the letter, I swear it, but I know why you're here. There's evil in this house. A curse, some say. It's taken hold, and now—" Her voice broke, and she glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "A curse?" Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. "Come, madame, let us step inside. You will explain all, n'est-ce pas?" Mrs. Tuttle hesitated, then led him into a cavernous foyer. The air was cold, the walls lined with faded portraits whose eyes seemed to follow them. A chandelier hung overhead, its crystals dulled by dust, casting jagged shadows across the marble floor. Poirot noted the neglect, the cracked tiles, the cobwebs in the corners. Harrow House was a tomb, its grandeur long buried. "Lord Harrow, he's difficult," Mrs. Tuttle began, guiding Poirot to a dimly lit parlour. A fire sputtered in the hearth, doing little to warm the room. "Keeps to himself, mostly, but lately he's been worse, talking of secrets, of enemies, and that symbol." She pointed to a small table where a silver tray held a single object. A brass paperweight, shaped like a broken hourglass, identical to the one on the letter. Poirot's fingers brushed the cold metal, his mind racing. This symbol, it means something to him. Before Mrs. Tuttle could answer, a blood-curdling scream tore through the house, sharp and raw, echoing from the upper floors. Poirot's head snapped up, his cane tapping the floor as he moved toward the sound. Mrs. Tuttle clutched her apron, her face ashen. "No, no, it's happening!" she gasped. "Stay here," Poirot commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He ascended the grand staircase, the screams still ringing in his ears. The fog pressed against the windows, turning the hallway into a tunnel of shadows. At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar, the flickering light from within casting a sickly glow. Poirot pushed the door open and froze. There, sprawled on a Persian rug, was a man in a velvet smoking jacket. Lord Edmund Harrow, his lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. Blood pooled beneath him, seeping from a dagger embedded in his chest. The dagger's hilt was ornate, engraved, with the same broken hourglass symbol. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the wound. "Feu, sacre bleu," he whispered. The murder was fresh, the blood still warm. He scanned the room, a study cluttered with books and papers, a shattered glass on the floor, a window slightly ajar, letting in tendrils of fog. The killer could not have gone far. Footsteps pounded behind him, and Mrs. Tuttle appeared, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, God, no! He's dead!" Poirot rose, his expression grim. "Madame, you will fetch the police at once, and tell no one what you have seen." As she fled, sobbing, Poirot's gaze returned to the dagger, its hourglass symbol glinting in the firelight. A crime had indeed been committed, but the letter's warning had come too late. Or had it? He straightened, his moustache twitching as his little grey cells began their work. This was no ordinary murder. It was a challenge, a puzzle designed to test him. And Hercule Poirot, despite the darkness creeping into his heart, would not rest until he had solved it. Chapter 2. The Weight of Reputation. The morning after Lord Harrow's murder, London awoke to a city buzzing with scandal. The fog had lifted, but a different haze, rumours, headlines and speculation cloaked the streets. Newsboys shouted from every corner, their papers emblazoned with garish headlines, "Aristocrat slain in cursed mansion," and "Hercule Poirot faces his toughest case yet." The broken hourglass symbol, sketched in lurid detail, stared from the front pages, a grim emblem of the mystery now gripping the public. Hercule Poirot sat in the parlour of his modest flat, a cup of tisane untouched on the table before him. His green eyes, usually sharp with purpose, were clouded as he scanned the newspapers. The press had wasted no time in weaving a narrative, some praising his genius, others questioning whether the great detective had finally met his match. One particularly venomous columnist had written, "Is Poirot's famed little grey cells no match for this diabolical killer? Mon Dieu, the vultures circle before the body is cold," Poirot muttered, folding the paper with precise, deliberate movements. His valet, George, entered with a tray of correspondence, but Poirot waved it away. His mind was elsewhere, haunted not only by the murder, but by a memory, a case from years ago when his confidence had led to a grave error. An innocent man, wrongly accused, had paid the ultimate price. The weight of that failure pressed on him now. Whispering doubts he rarely allowed to surface. A sharp knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. George admitted a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp police uniform. Inspector Grayson of Scotland Yard. His weathered face was set in a scowl, his eyes appraising Poirot with barely concealed scepticism. "Monsieur Poirot," Grayson began, his tone clipped, "I've been assigned to the Harrow case. The Yard appreciates your involvement, but we'll take it from here. Civilians complicating matters won't do." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Complicating, Inspector? Au contraire, I simplify. The crime at Harrow House is no ordinary murder. The symbol, the letter, the timing, these are threads in a tapestry most intricate. You would do well to heed Poirot's methods." Grayson's scowl deepened. "Methods? Theatrics, more like. I've read about you, parading about, making grand speeches. This isn't a stage play. We've got a killer to catch, and I don't need a foreigner slowing us down." Poirot rose, his small frame radiating authority. "And yet, Inspector, it was to Poirot the letter was sent. It is Poirot who stood over Lord Harrow's body. You may dismiss me, but you cannot dismiss the truth." Grayson muttered something under his breath, but relented, tossing a file onto the table. "Fine. Here's what we know. Lord Edmund Harrow, 58, widower, no children, lived like a hermit, hated by half the city. Debts, feuds, you name it. Suspects are piling up faster than we can count." Poirot opened the file, his fingers tracing the list of names. Lady Margaret Harrow, the victim's estranged sister-in-law. Clara Harrow, his rebellious niece. Mr. Vincent Cole, a disgraced business partner, and a dozen others with grudges or secrets. Harrow's life, it seemed, was a web of enmity. "Interessant," Poirot murmured. "And what of the hourglass symbol? The dagger?" Grayson shrugged. "Some cult nonsense, probably. Harrow was obsessed with oddities, artifacts, old books. We're looking into it, but it's likely just the killer's flourish." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A flourish? No, Inspector. It is the key. A killer does not leave such a mark without purpose. It is a message, a signature." Before Grayson could retort, George announced another visitor. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's old friend, burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Poirot, old chap, I heard about Harrow House. Ghastly business. I'm here to help, of course." Poirot's expression softened, though a flicker of caution lingered. Hastings's enthusiasm was a comfort, but the letter's warning, "Trust no one," echoed in his mind. "My dear Hastings, your timing is impeccable. We have much to discuss." Grayson, unimpressed, stood to leave. "I'll expect your report, Poirot. Don't make me regret this." As the door closed behind him, Poirot turned to Hastings, gesturing to the file. "Come, mon ami. We begin with Lord Harrow's enemies. But first, I must visit Harrow House. Again. There is something I missed, something the fog concealed." The return to Harrow House was sombre. The mansion seemed even more oppressive in daylight, its decay stark under the grey sky. Mrs. Tuttle, still shaken, admitted them, her eyes darting nervously. "The police have been poking about," she whispered. "They don't understand." This house? It's cursed." Poirot patted her hand. "Curses, madame, are but stories. Truth is what we seek." He moved to the study where Harrow's body had been found, now cordoned off. The bloodstain remained, a dark blot on the rug. Poirot knelt, his eyes scanning the room with meticulous care. "Hastings, observe," he said, pointing to a faint scratch on the window-sill. "The window was opened, yes, but this mark, it is fresh. Someone climbed out, perhaps." Hastings frowned. "The killer? But why climb when they could use the door?" Poirot's gaze drifted to a bookshelf, where a single volume, a leather-bound tome on ancient societies, jutted out slightly. He pulled it free, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a folded paper, yellowed with age, bearing the broken hourglass symbol and a name. "The Order of the Shattered Hour. Sacre bleu," Poirot whispered. Lord Harrow was no mere eccentric. He was entangled with something far darker. As they left the study, a shadow moved in the hallway, a figure fleeting, gone before Hastings could react. Poirot's heart quickened, but he maintained his calm. The mystery was deepening, and with it the pressure of his reputation. Failure was not an option, yet the ghosts of his past whispered that even he could falter. Chapter 3. Whispers of Betrayal. The air in Harrow House was thick with secrets, as if the walls themselves hoarded truths too heavy to bear. Hercule Poirot stood in the mansion's drawing-room, its faded grandeur a stark contrast to the tension simmering among its occupants. The morning light filtered through heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the faces of Lord Harrow's family and associates, summoned at Poirot's request. Each sat stiffly, their eyes darting with suspicion, their silence louder than words. Poirot, impeccable in his tailored suit, paced slowly before them, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm on the parquet floor. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, notebook in hand, his earnest expression a counterpoint to Poirot's calculated calm. The room held Lady Margaret Harrow, the victim's icy sister-in-law, Clara Harrow, his defiant niece, Vincent Cole, the disgraced business partner, and Mrs. Tuttle, the housekeeper, who hovered nervously at the edge of the group. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice smooth but commanding, "the death of Lord Edmund Harrow is no simple crime. It is a puzzle, a labyrinth of motives and deceits. Each of you, I suspect, holds a piece of this puzzle. Poirot asks only for the truth, but be warned, the truth has a way of revealing itself, whether you speak or no." Lady Margaret, her silver hair pinned tightly, fixed Poirot with a glacial stare. "This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. My brother-in-law was a foolish man who made enemies. Why drag us into his mess? I've not set foot in this house in years." "Poirot's?" Moustache twitched. "And yet, madame, you inherit a portion of his estate, do you not? A motive, perhaps, for one less scrupulous than yourself." Her lips thinned, but she said nothing. Clara, slouched in an armchair, rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, if anyone wanted Uncle Edmund dead, it was because he was a tyrant, always ranting about his precious artifacts, locking himself away. He didn't care about us, only his secrets." "Secrets, Mademoiselle Clara?" Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Perhaps you know of these secrets? The broken hourglass, for instance?" Clara's defiance faltered, her fingers twisting a silver bracelet. "I heard him mention it once. Something about an old society. He was obsessed, said it was dangerous. I thought he was just paranoid. Vincent Cole, a wiry man with a nervous tic, cleared his throat. Harrow was unhinged, I'll give you that. Owed me money too, ruined my business when he pulled out of our deal. But I didn't kill him. I was in Bristol the night he died. Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving Cole's face. An alibi, Monsieur Cole, is only as strong as its proof. We shall see. As the interviews continued, Poirot's little grey cells churned. Lady Margaret's aloofness masked a quiet resentment. Clara's bravado hid fear. Cole's desperation suggested more than financial loss. Mrs. Tuttle, wringing her hands, spoke of Harrow's late-night visitors. Strangers cloaked in dark coats, their voices low and urgent. But it was a passing remark from the butler, Mr. Grayson, no relation to the inspector, that caught Poirot's attention. "I overheard something, sir," Grayson whispered, as he served tea, his voice barely audible. The night before his death, Lord Harrow argued with someone in the study. A man, I think. He said, "You'll not have it, not after what you did." Then a crash, like glass breaking. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, Monsieur Grayson. You have been most helpful." The butler's words aligned with the shattered glass found in the study, a clue now glowing brighter in Poirot's mind. Later, as the group dispersed, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the garden, where the air was crisp and the fog a distant memory. Hastings flipped through his notes, frowning. "Poirot, they're all hiding something, aren't they? But who's lying the most? Mon ami, in a house like this lies are as common as dust. But there is one lie, or perhaps an omission, that troubles me." Poirot paused, his gaze fixed on a stone fountain, its water stagnant, the order of the shattered hour. Clara knows more than she admits, and Lady Margaret's ignorance feels, rehearsed, we must dig deeper. Their conversation was interrupted by the crunch of gravel. Mrs. Tuttle approached, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I found something in Lord Harrow's desk. I didn't dare show the police." She handed him a small sealed envelope, its wax stamped with the hourglass symbol. Poirot broke the seal, revealing a single sheet of paper. The words, written in Harrow's hand, were chilling. "The Order knows. They will come for me. If I die, trust only the one who bears the mark." Below was a crude sketch of a tattoo, a broken hourglass entwined with a serpent. "Sacre bleu," Poirot murmured. "The plot thickens." Hastings leaned over, his eyes wide. "A mark? You think the killer has this tattoo?" "Or perhaps a saviour," Poirot replied, folding the note carefully. "But we must be cautious, Hastings. The letter that summoned me warned of trust, and yet—" His words trailed off as a figure emerged from the house. Clara, her coat pulled tight, slipping toward the stables. Poirot's instincts flared. "Come, mon ami, let us see where Mademoiselle Clara goes in such haste." They followed at a distance, weaving through the overgrown gardens. Clara entered the stables, and moments later, a low voice, not hers, echoed from within. Poirot signalled for silence, creeping closer. Through a crack in the door, he glimpsed Clara speaking to a man in a dark coat, his face obscured. Their words were hushed, But one phrase reached Poirot's ears. "He's getting too close." As Clara turned to leave, the man grabbed her arm and she flinched. Poirot's heart sank, not with fear, but with the sting of betrayal. Clara was no mere victim. She was entangled, perhaps willingly, in the web surrounding Harrow's death. Hastings. Poirot whispered as they retreated. "We have been played. But by whom? And to what end? The little grey cells, they must work faster." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting Harrow House in shadow once more. Poirot's resolve hardened, but the whisper of betrayal lingered, a crack in the foundation of his trust. Chapter 4. The Hourglass Cipher. The discovery of Clara's clandestine meeting in the stables gnawed at Hercule Poirot's mind like a persistent riddle. The man's whispered words, "He's getting too close," echoed in his thoughts, a warning that tightened the noose of danger around the investigation. Yet Poirot's composure remained unshaken as he and Captain Hastings returned to Harrow House, the evening sky bruised with clouds threatening rain. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere was stifling, the weight of suspicion palpable. Poirot, his cane tapping softly, led Hastings to Lord Harrow's study, where the murder had occurred. The room was as they had left it, save for the police tape now fraying at the edges. The bloodstain on the rug had darkened, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered the house's silence. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low, "we must uncover what Clara hides. But first, we return to the heart of the mystery, the order of the shattered hour. This is no mere fancy of a troubled mind. It is the thread that binds all." Hastings, flipping through his notebook, frowned. "But Poirot, that note you found, trust only the one who bears the mark. It's vague, and Clara's meeting, could she be part of this order?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps Hastings, or perhaps she is but a pawn. We shall see. For now, let us examine what Lord Harrow guarded so fiercely." He moved to the bookshelf where he had found the hidden compartment. The leather-bound tome on ancient societies still jutted out, as if mocking their oversight. Poirot opened the compartment again, but this time he probed deeper, his gloved fingers brushing against a false panel. With a soft click, it gave way, revealing a small locked box engraved with the broken hourglass symbol. "Sacre bleu," Poirot murmured, lifting the box. It was heavy, its surface cold to the touch. A secret within a secret. But where is the key? Hastings, ever practical, began searching the desk, rifling through drawers cluttered with papers and trinkets. "Here," he exclaimed, holding up a small brass key tucked inside a cigar box. Poirot's moustache twitched with approval as he unlocked the box, revealing a bundle of documents tied with twine. Atop them lay a single sheet, its edges frayed, covered in a grid of numbers and letters. A cipher. "The hourglass cipher," Poirot said, his voice tinged with excitement. Lord Harrow was no fool. He hid his knowledge in code, knowing it was dangerous. As they spread the documents on the desk, a distant crash echoed through the house, followed by a shout. Hastings started toward the door, but Poirot held up a hand. "Patience, mon ami. First, the cipher. The house will keep its dramas a moment longer." With Hastings peering over his shoulder, Poirot studied the grid. The numbers formed patterns, each paired with a letter or symbol. His little grey cells churned, recalling ciphers from past cases. "It is a substitution cipher, but layered," he murmured. "The hourglass symbol. It is the key to the shift." After several minutes of intense focus, Poirot began scribbling on a notepad, decoding the first line. "The Order of the Shattered Hour guards the relic of fate." His heart quickened. The next line was less clear, mentioning a betrayer within and a sanctuary defiled. The cipher's complexity hinted at a larger conspiracy, but before Poirot could decipher more, the door burst open. Mrs. Tuttle stood there, her face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, come quickly! It's Mr. Thorne, the historian! He's dead!" Poirot and Hastings exchanged a glance, the cipher momentarily forgotten. They followed Mrs. Tuttle to the library, where a small crowd, Lady Margaret, Clara, and the butler, Grayson, huddled near a crumpled figure. Mr. Archibald Thorne, a local historian known for his research on secret societies, lay sprawled on the floor, his glasses shattered beside him. A thin trickle of blood seeped from a wound at his temple, and clutched in his hand was a scrap of paper bearing the broken hourglass symbol. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot whispered, kneeling beside the body. The wound suggested a blunt object, and the room showed signs of a struggle. Books scattered, a chair overturned. He gently pried the paper from Thorne's fingers. It was a partial map, crudely drawn, with the words "The Chapel" scrawled in haste. Hastings, pale, looked to Poirot. "Another murder, and that symbol again. This is no coincidence, is it?" "Non, Hastings," Poirot replied, his voice grim. "The killer strikes to silence. Mr. Thorne knew something, perhaps too much about the Order, and this map, it is a clue to their sanctuary." Lady Margaret's voice cut through the murmurs. "This is madness. First Edmund, now Thorne. We're all in danger." Her composure cracked, revealing a flicker of fear. Clara, standing apart, avoided Poirot's gaze, her hands stuffed in her pockets. Poirot noted her unease, his suspicions deepening. Had her meeting in the stables been with the killer? Or was she, too, a target? As the police were summoned, Poirot returned to the study with Hastings, the cipher now a burning priority. He resumed decoding, his pen moving swiftly. The final decoded fragment read, "The betrayer wears the serpent's mark. Trust none but the guardian." The reference to the serpent matched the tattoo described in Harrow's note, but its meaning remained elusive. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice tense, "this Order, they're killing anyone who gets close to their secrets. What if you are next?" Poirot straightened, his eyes blazing with determination. "Then, mon ami, we must be swifter than they. The cipher points to a chapel, and the map confirms it. We will find this sanctuary, and with it, the truth." As they prepared to leave, a shadow passed the study window. A fleeting figure, gone before Hastings could react. Poirot's heart thudded, but his resolve was iron. The Order of the Shattered Hour was watching, and the killer was closing in. The little grey cells, he knew, must not falter now. Chapter 5. A Dance with Darkness. The grand ballroom of the Eldridge Hotel glittered with opulence, a stark contrast to the grim shadows of Harrow House. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the assembled guests, their laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Yet, beneath the veneer of merriment, tension coiled like a serpent. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his evening attire, moved through the crowd with the grace of a predator, his sharp green eyes scanning for clues. Tonight's gala, hosted by Vincent Cole, was no mere social event. It was a stage, and Poirot intended to unmask the players. Captain Hastings at his side tugged at his bow tie, clearly uncomfortable in the formal setting. "I say, Poirot, this feels like a trap. Cole's no saint. Why invite half the suspects to this shindig after 2 murders?" "Mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice low, "it is precisely because of the murders that he hosts. To observe, to deflect, perhaps to provoke. The guilty often hide in plain sight, and tonight we shall see who stumbles." The guest list was a who's who of Harrow's circle. Lady Margaret, her silver gown as cold as her demeanour; Clara, in a daring red dress, her eyes darting nervously; and a slew of London's elite, many with whispered ties to Lord Harrow's shadowy dealings. Poirot's discovery of the hourglass cipher and the map to the chapel weighed heavily on his mind. The Order of the Shattered Hour was no myth, and its reach extended far beyond Harrow House. As a string quartet struck up a waltz, Poirot manoeuvred toward Lady Margaret, who stood near a marble pillar, sipping champagne. "Madame," he said, bowing slightly, "you seem at ease, despite the tragedies that surround us." Her lips curled into a thin smile. "Monsieur Poirot, I've endured worse than scandal. Edmund's death is a loss, but hardly a surprise. He courted danger with his obsessions." "Obsessions?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Such as the Order of the Shattered Hour." Lady Margaret's glass paused at her lips, her eyes narrowing. "You've been digging, haven't you?" Edmund spoke of it once. "A foolish club of dreamers chasing myths. I paid it no mind." Poirot noted the flicker of unease in her voice. But before he could press further, Clara approached, her cheeks flushed from dancing. "Monsieur Poirot, you're wasting your time with Aunt Margaret. She'd rather die than admit she knows anything." "Clara!" Lady Margaret snapped, but the younger woman only smirked, brushing past them toward the dance floor. Poirot's gaze followed her, recalling her secretive meeting in the stables. Her boldness was a mask, he suspected, for something far more vulnerable. Hastings, meanwhile, had struck up a conversation with Vincent Cole, who was regaling a group with tales of his latest business ventures. Poirot joined them, catching Cole's eye. "Monsieur Cole, a splendid evening. Yet, I wonder, does it not trouble you, hosting such a gathering so soon after Lord Harrow's demise?" Cole's smile was all teeth. "Life goes on, Poirot. Harrow was a partner, not a friend. Besides, half of London's here to speculate about his death. Might as well give them a show." "Intéressant," Poirot murmured. "And what of the Order? Did Lord Harrow ever speak of it to you?" Cole's expression flickered, but he recovered quickly. Some nonsense about a relic. He was always chasing old trinkets. If that's what got him killed, it's his own fault. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the terrace doors. A waiter had dropped a tray, drawing gasps from the crowd. Poirot's instincts flared, and he slipped through the throng, Hastings trailing behind. Outside, the terrace was bathed in moonlight, the gardens beyond a maze of shadows. A figure stood at the far end, a man cloaked and masked, his silhouette chillingly familiar. "Monsieur," Poirot called, striding forward. The figure turned, and for a moment their eyes locked through the mask's slits. The stranger's voice was a hiss, barely audible over the music drifting from the ballroom. "You cannot stop time, Poirot. Walk away or join the dead." Before Poirot could respond, the figure vaulted over the balustrade, vanishing into the gardens. Hastings, panting, reached Poirot's side. Good Lord, was that the killer? "Perhaps," Poirot said, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "Or a messenger. The order is bold to confront me so openly." They returned to the ballroom, but the night took a darker turn. As Poirot sipped a glass of water offered by a waiter, a bitter aftertaste lingered. Within moments, his vision blurred, his limbs growing heavy. "Mon Dieu!" he gasped, clutching Hastings's arm. "Poison!" Hastings acted swiftly, guiding Poirot to a quiet alcove and summoning a doctor from among the guests. The physician, a stern woman with quick hands, administered an antidote, muttering about ipecac and luck. Poirot's strength returned slowly, his mind racing. The poison had been subtle, meant to kill quietly, a coward's weapon. "Who gave you the glass?" Hastings demanded, his face pale with worry. Poirot shook his head, the memory hazy. "Waiter. But he is gone, no doubt. The order, they strike to silence me, just as they did Thorn." As the gala wound down, Poirot and Hastings left the hotel, the night air sharp against their skin. The encounter with the masked figure and the poisoning attempt had shaken Poirot, though he would not admit it. The Order of the Shattered Hour was no mere cult. It was a machine of death, and its gears were turning faster. "Hastings," Poirot said as they climbed into a cab, "tomorrow we find this chapel, the map, the cipher. They point to the heart of the order. But we must be cautious. Tonight I danced with darkness, and it nearly claimed me." The cab rattled through London's streets, the city's lights blurring into streaks of gold. Poirot's little grey cells burned with purpose, but a seed of doubt lingered. The order knew his every move, and the next misstep could be his last. Chapter 6. The Ghosts of Yesterday. The narrow streets of London were cloaked in the pre-dawn hush, the city still slumbering as Hercule Poirot sat in his flat, the bitter taste of the previous night's poison lingering in his memory. The attempt on his life at the gala had left him shaken, though he would never confess it. His hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as he poured a cup of tisane, the steam curling like spectres in the dim light. The Order of the Shattered Hour was closing in, and with each step deeper into the mystery, the shadows of his past grew harder to ignore. Captain Hastings, sprawled in an armchair, watched Poirot with concern. "You're not yourself, old chap. That poison business, dashed close call. Perhaps we should let Grayson and the Yard handle things for a bit." Poirot's moustache twitched, a spark of indignation in his green eyes. "Non, mon ami. To retreat now would be to admit defeat. The little grey cells, they are bruised, yes, but not broken. We press on, to the chapel, to the heart of this order." Yet, as he spoke, his mind drifted to a case from a decade ago, one that haunted him still. The name Julian Moreau surfaced, unbidden, a young man wrongly accused of murder, whose innocence Poirot had failed to prove in time. Moreau's execution had been a wound that never healed, a reminder that even the great Hercule Poirot could falter. The gala's masked figure, the cipher's talk of betrayal, the hourglass symbol, they stirred that old guilt, whispering that this case might break him as Moreau's had. A knock at the door snapped him back to the present. George, his valet, admitted a courier bearing a small package from Scotland Yard. Inside was a photograph, sent by Inspector Grayson with a curt note. Found in Thorne's study. Might interest you. The image showed Lord Harrow, younger and stern, standing beside a woman with striking features, dark hair, piercing eyes, a faint smile. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, E.H. and L.V., Paris, 1915. Intéressant, Poirot murmured, studying the woman's face. Who is this L.V., and why was this photograph in Thorne's possession? Hastings leaned over, squinting. She looks familiar, doesn't she? Could she be tied to the order? Perhaps, Poirot said, tucking the photograph into his pocket. Thorne was researching secret societies. If this woman, L.V., was connected to Harrow and the Order, her disappearance may hold the key. We must learn more. The morning took them to the British Library, where Poirot hoped to cross-reference Thorne's notes on the Order of the Shattered Hour. The library's vast reading room was a sanctuary of silence, its domed ceiling looming, like a watchful eye. Poirot and Hastings pored over Thorne's borrowed journals, filled with sketches of the hourglass symbol and cryptic references to a relic of fate hidden in a chapel. One entry stood out. L.V. betrayed the Order. Her fate sealed the schism. The serpent's mark is the proof. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered, his heart quickening. The serpent's mark again, as mentioned in Harrow's note and the cipher. This L.V., she was no mere bystander. She was at the heart of the Order's collapse. As they left the library, a memory surged, unbidden and vivid. Poirot was in a Parisian courtroom, 1919, facing Julian Moreau's desperate eyes. He had been so certain of the evidence, so sure of his deductions, only to learn too late that a key witness had lied. Moreau's final words, "You failed me, Poirot," echoed now. A ghost that clung to this new case, the Order's betrayer, the serpent's mark, the chapel. It all felt like a mirror to that past failure, daring him to falter again. Back at Harrow House, Poirot sought out Mrs. Tuttle, hoping her long service might shed light on the mysterious L.V. The housekeeper, polishing silver in the kitchen, looked up with weary eyes. "I don't know any L.V., sir," she said, but her hands paused, betraying unease. Lord Harrow had visitors over the years, women included, but he never spoke of them. Only there was a scandal, long ago. A woman who vanished. The staff whispered she'd been his lover. A lover? Poirot's voice was gentle, but probing. And what became of her? Mrs. Tuttle shook her head. No one knows. Some said she ran off, others that she was silenced. Lord Harrow changed after that, became colder, secretive. Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. The photograph, the scandal, the Order's schism, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. He and Hastings returned too, the study where the cipher's decoded fragments lay scattered on the desk. Poirot's fingers traced the words. The betrayer wears the serpent's mark. Was Elvie the betrayer? And if so, who bore the mark now? As evening fell, Poirot's thoughts grew heavier. He stood by the study's window, gazing at the darkening gardens. The gala's poison had been a warning, the masked figure a taunt. Thither, order knew he was close, and their desperation was a double-edged sword, proof he was on the right path, but also a sign of the danger ahead. "Hastings," he said, turning to his friend, "tomorrow we find this chapel, the map from Thorn's hand. It is our guide. But I fear the ghosts of yesterday may cloud my judgment." Hastings, ever loyal, clapped a hand on Poirot's shoulder. "Nonsense, Poirot! You're the sharpest mind I know. We'll crack this together." Poirot managed a faint smile, but the weight of Moreau's memory lingered. The little grey cells were tireless, but the heart, mon Dieu, the heart was weary. As the rain began to fall, pattering against the window, Poirot vowed to press on. The chapel held answers, and he would face whatever darkness awaited, lest the ghosts of yesterday claim another victory. Chapter 7. The Ticking Clock. The rain that had begun the previous night continued into the morning, a relentless drizzle that turned London's streets into rivers of grey. Hercule Poirot stood at the window of his flat, his reflection a ghostly overlay on the rain-streaked glass. The photograph of Lord Harrow and the mysterious L.V. lay on the table behind him, alongside the decoded fragments of the hourglass cipher and Thorn's crumpled map. The pieces of the puzzle were mounting, but time was slipping through Poirot's fingers like sand from a broken hourglass. Captain Hastings burst into the room, his coat dripping, a newspaper clutched in his hand. "Poirot! It's happened again! Another murder!" He thrust the paper forward, its headline screaming, "Third victim in hourglass killings." Poirot's heart sank as he took the paper. The victim was Mr. Vincent Cole, the disgraced business partner, found dead in his office late last night. The article described a pocket watch left at the scene, its hands frozen at midnight, and the now familiar broken hourglass symbol etched into its casing. The press had dubbed the killer the Hourglass, and panic was spreading through London's elite. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice tight. "The killer accelerates. Cole, Thorn, Harrow, each struck to silence what they knew. But what links them, Hastings? What truth is so dangerous?" Hastings paced, his face grim. Cole was at the gala, Poirot. He knew about Harrow's relics, maybe even the order, and now this watch. It's like the killer's taunting us, counting down to something. Poirot nodded, his little grey cells whirring. A countdown, yes. The watch is a message, a challenge. The killer dares us to act before the final hour. We must find the chapel, Hastings. Thorn's map. It is our only lead. Before they could plan further, a knock announced Inspector Grayson's arrival. The inspector's face was haggard, his usual scepticism tempered by exhaustion. "Poirot, we've got a suspect in custody. A clerk from Cole's office says he saw a man matching Cole's description arguing with someone the night he died. We found the clerk with a stash of stolen documents, some with that blasted hourglass symbol." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A convenient suspect, Inspector. Too convenient, perhaps. Show me these documents." Grayson hesitated, then handed over a folder. The papers were financial records, detailing transactions between Cole and Harrow, with cryptic annotations referencing the order and a relic. One page bore a handwritten note: "The serpent's mark will not save you." Poirot's pulse quickened. The same mark mentioned in the cipher and Harrow's note. "This clerk," Poirot said. "He is a scapegoat. The killer plants evidence to mislead you, Inspector. These documents, they confirm the order's existence, but they do not name the murderer. We must look to the chapel." Grayson scoffed. "A chapel? You're chasing ghosts, Poirot. I've got a man in cuffs and a city demanding answers. You'd better deliver, or I'll have you off this case." As Grayson stormed out, Poirot turned to Hastings. "The police are blinded by haste, mon ami, but we shall not be. Prepare yourself. We leave for the chapel at once." Thorne's map, though crude, pointed to an abandoned chapel on the outskirts of London, nestled in a forgotten corner of Highgate. The journey was tense, the rain hammering the roof of their cab as it rattled through the city. Poirot clutched the map, his mind wrestling with the ghosts of his past failure with Julian Moreau. The ticking clock of this case felt like a mirror to that old tragedy. Each murder a reminder that he could not afford to err again. The chapel loomed into view as the cab stopped, its Gothic spires crumbling under the weight of neglect. Ivy choked, its walls and the stained glass windows were shattered, their colours dulled by time. Poirot and Hastings approached cautiously, the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and decay. Inside, the chapel was a cavern of shadows, its pews rotted, its altar draped in cobwebs. Poirot's cane tapped the stone floor, the sound echoing like a heartbeat. At the altar, they found a hidden panel, revealed by a faint outline in the dust. Poirot pressed it, and a compartment clicked open, revealing a single object. A brass medallion, engraved with the broken hourglass and a coiled serpent. "Sacre bleu," Poirot whispered, lifting the medallion. "The serpent's mark. This is no mere clue. It is a relic of the order." Hastings, peering over his shoulder, froze. "Poirot, look!" He pointed to a scrap of paper tucked beneath the medallion, its edges charred. Scrawled in a frantic hand were the words, "The final hour approaches. Stop him, Poirot, or all is lost." Poirot's blood ran cold. The message was personal, addressed to him. The killer knew he would come, knew he would find this place. "The hourglass plays a game," he said, his voice steady despite the chill in his bones. "But it is a game we shall win." As they prepared to leave, a creak echoed from the chapel's entrance. Poirot spun, his hand tightening on his cane. A figure stood silhouetted against the doorway, cloaked and motionless. Before Poirot could call out, the figure turned and fled, vanishing into the rain. "Hastings, after him!" Poirot urged, but the muddy ground and the storm slowed their pursuit. The figure was gone, leaving only the echo of their presence. Poirot's heart pounded, not with fear, but with resolve. The killer was close, and the chapel had revealed a truth. The Order's relic was real, and its power was worth killing for. Shade. In the cab, Poirot clutched the medallion, its weight a promise and a burden. "The final hour," he murmured. "We must decipher its meaning, Hastings, before the clock strikes midnight again." The rain fell harder, blurring the world beyond the window. Poirot's little grey cells burned with purpose, but the ticking clock was relentless, and the ghosts of his past whispered that time was running out. Chapter 8. The Masked Motive. The rain had ceased, leaving London's streets glistening under the gaslights as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned from the desolate chapel. The brass medallion, engraved with the broken hourglass and serpent, rested heavily in Poirot's pocket, its cold weight a constant reminder of the order of the shattered hour's deadly reach. The cryptic message found with it, "The final hour approaches. Stop him, Poirot, or all is lost," burned in his mind, a taunt from the killer known as the Hourglass. Back in Poirot's flat, the air was thick with tension. Hastings paced, his brow furrowed. "That figure at the chapel, Poirot. Do you think it was the killer? And this medallion, what's it for? It's driving me mad." Poirot, seated at his desk, polished the medallion with a cloth. His green eyes narrowed, in thought. "Patience, mon ami. The medallion is no mere trinket. It is a symbol of power within the order. As for the figure, they were watching, yes, but whether they are the killer or another pawn, we cannot yet say. The little grey cells, they churn, Hastings. We are close, but the motive remains masked." He set the medallion down and opened Thorne's journals, cross-referencing the historian's notes with the cipher's decoded fragments. A pattern emerged. The Order was not merely a secret society, but a cult, obsessed with a relic they believed could control fate. The relic of fate, mentioned in both the cipher and Thorne's writings, was tied to the serpent's mark, and its theft had sparked a schism years ago. Poirot's thoughts turned to L.V., the woman in the photograph, whose betrayal had fractured the Order. "We must learn more of this relic," Poirot said, rising, "and there is one who may know, Clara Harrow. Her secrecy, her meeting in the stables, she is entangled, willingly or not. We shall confront her." Hastings hesitated. "Be careful, Poirot. After that poisoning at the gala, the Order's got you in their sights." Poirot's moustache twitched. Let them watch. Hercule Poirot does not cower. They arrived at Harrow House as dusk settled, the mansion's silhouette stark against the fading light. Mrs. Tuttle admitted them, her hands trembling. "Miss Clara's in the conservatory, sir. She's been strange since Mr. Cole's death. Keeps to herself, muttering about mistakes." The conservatory was a glass-walled jungle, overgrown with ferns and orchids, the air heavy with humidity. Clara sat on a wicker chair, a cigarette dangling from her fingers, her red dress swapped for a sombre black one. Her eyes, red-rimmed, flicked up as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice brittle. "Come to accuse me, have you?" Poirot sat opposite her, his cane resting across his knees. "Accuse? No, mademoiselle, I seek only the truth. You know of the Order of the Shattered Hour, do you not? And this—" He produced the medallion, its serpent glinting in the lamplight. "What does it mean to you?" Clara's cigarette trembled, ash falling to the floor. "You don't understand. I was a fool, caught up in their promises. They said they could change things, fix the world. But it was all lies, and when I tried to leave, her voice broke, and she pulled up her sleeve, revealing a faint tattoo on her forearm, a broken hourglass entwined with a serpent." Hastings gasped, but Poirot's expression remained impassive. "The serpent's mark. You were a member of order then. Why did you not tell me?" "Because they'd kill me," Clara snapped, her eyes blazing. "I was young, stupid. Uncle Edmund dragged me into it, said it was our legacy. But after after she betrayed them, they turned on each other. I ran, hid, but they found me, forced me to spy on you." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but unyielding. "And the man in the stables, who was he?" Clara's defiance crumbled. "I don't know his name. He wore a mask like at the gala. Said if I didn't help, they'd kill Aunt Margaret too. I'm not the killer, Monsieur Poirot. I'm a victim." Poirot studied her, his little grey cells weighing her words. Her fear seemed genuine, but her involvement with the order cast a long shadow. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have given me much to consider. But know this, the truth will not stay hidden." As they left the conservatory, Hastings whispered, "Do you believe her, Poirot? She's got the mark, but she's terrified." "Fear can be a mask, mon ami," Poirot replied. "Clara is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole. The killer seeks the relic, and I suspect they were once part of the order, betrayed as LV was. A motive of revenge, perhaps." Their discussion was cut short by a commotion at the front door. Inspector Grayson stormed in, his face thunderous. "Poirot, you've gone too far. We've got evidence tying Clara to Cole's murder. Her fingerprints on a letter found in his office. She's under arrest." Clara, overhearing, let out a cry as constables seized her. "I didn't do it. Poirot, please." Poirot's heart raced, but his voice was calm. "Inspector, you act in haste. The fingerprints, they are planted, as the clerk's evidence was. The hourglass manipulates you, and you play into their hands." Grayson's jaw tightened. "Save it for the courtroom. She's coming with us." As Clara was led away, her eyes locked on Poirot's, pleading. He felt a pang of doubt. Had he misjudged her? The medallion, the cipher, the murders, all pointed to a deeper conspiracy, and Clara's arrest felt like another move in the killer's game. Back in the cab, Hastings was grim. If Clara's not the killer, we're running out of suspects, and that message, the final hour, it's like a noose tightening. Poirot clutched the medallion, its serpent seeming to writhe in the dim light. The noose tightens. Yes, but for whom? The chapel holds the answers, Hastings. Tomorrow we return, and we unmask the motive behind these killings. The cab rattled through the night, London's lights flickering like stars in a storm. Poirot's resolve was iron, but the masked figure's words from the gala echoed, "You cannot stop time." The little grey cells burned brighter than ever, but the clock was ticking, and the motive remained just out of reach. Chapter 9. The Edge of Despair. The sky over London was a leaden shroud, mirroring the heaviness in Hercule Poirot's heart as he stood alone in Highgate Cemetery. The rain had paused, leaving the air damp and cold, the gravestones slick with moisture. Before him was a modest marker, its inscription faded but etched in his memory. Julian Moreau, 1895–1919. Justice denied. The ghost of that failure, a case where his arrogance had cost an innocent man his life, had haunted him through the Harrow investigation. Now, with Clara arrested and the order of the shattered hour tightening its grip, Poirot felt the weight of despair pressing down. Captain Hastings had remained at the flat, respecting Poirot's need for solitude after the chaos of Clara's arrest. The newspapers were merciless, their headlines branding Poirot a meddler whose interference had led to more deaths. "Has Poirot lost his touch?" one rag proclaimed, while another sneered, "The hourglass outwits the great detective." Even Inspector Grayson, once grudgingly cooperative, had barred Poirot from the police station, accusing him of obstructing justice. Poirot knelt, brushing a leaf from Moreau's gravestone. "Mon ami," he whispered, "I failed you once, will not fail again." The words were a vow, a spark of resolve in the darkness of his doubt. Clara's tearful plea as she was taken away echoed in his mind, "I didn't do it." And though her involvement with the order was undeniable, Poirot's instincts screamed that she was no murderer. The hourglass was orchestrating a grand deception, and he had been too slow to see it. Rising, Poirot adjusted his hat and turned back toward the city. The medallion, still in his pocket, was a talisman of the mystery's core. The chapel, the relic, the serpent's mark, they were converging, and he could not afford to falter now. He hailed a cab and directed it to his flat, where a breakthrough awaited. Hastings was hunched over the desk, surrounded by papers, when Poirot arrived. "Poirot, thank heavens! I've been at the cipher again. Look!" He pointed to a newly decoded fragment, scribbled in his uneven hand. "The relic lies where the hourglass breaks, beneath the serpent's gaze." Poirot's eyes gleamed, the fog of despair lifting slightly. "Magnifique, Hastings! This confirms the chapel is the key. The relic of fate. It is hidden there, under the serpent's mark. We must return at once." Hastings hesitated, his face etched with worry. "But Poirot, the police, they're watching us. And after that poisoning, the order's out for blood. Are you sure you're up for this?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a flicker of his old fire returning. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they do not rest. The order fears us because we are close. We go to the chapel, and we end this." The journey to Highgate was fraught with tension. The city's bustle, a stark contrast to the quiet dread in Poirot's heart. The chapel loomed as before, its Gothic decay more ominous in the fading light. Inside, the air was stale, the silence broken only by the drip of water from a cracked roof. Poirot moved to the altar where they had found the medallion, his cane tapping out a steady rhythm. "Hastings, search for a serpent," he instructed, his voice low. "A carving, a symbol, something that gazes upon the hiding place." They scoured the chapel, their lantern casting eerie shadows. Hastings, examining the altar's base, let out a cry. "Here, Poirot!" Etched into the stone was a serpent, its eyes inlaid with dull gems, coiled around a broken hourglass. The carving was subtle, easily overlooked, but its gaze pointed to a flagstone beneath the altar. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers probing the stone. It shifted, revealing a shallow recess. Inside was a small ornate box, its lid engraved with the hourglass symbol. He lifted it carefully, his breath catching. "The relic of fate," he murmured. Before he could open the box, a creak echoed from the chapel's entrance. Poirot froze, his hand tightening on his cane. A shadow moved in the doorway, not the cloaked figure from before, but someone familiar. It was Mrs. Tuttle, her face pale, a revolver trembling in her hands. "Monsieur Poirot," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. They made me. They'll kill my son if I don't stop you." Hastings stepped forward, hands raised. "Mrs. Tuttle, put the gun down. We can help you." "No," she cried, the gun wavering. "You don't understand. The order. They're everywhere. They know everything." Poirot's voice was calm, almost soothing. "Madame, you are not a killer. Tell me who threatens you. Together we can end this." Tears streamed down her face, but before she could respond, a sharp crack rang out. Mrs. Tuttle gasped, the revolver clattering to the floor as she collapsed, a dart protruding from her neck. Poirot spun, scanning the shadows, but the attacker was gone, vanished into the chapel's gloom. Hastings rushed to Mrs. Tuttle, checking her pulse. "She's alive, Poirot. Drugged, not dead. But who?" Poirot clutched the box, his heart pounding. "The hourglass. They protect the relic at all costs. We must leave, Hastings, now." They fled the chapel, the box tucked under Poirot's arm, Mrs. Tuttle cradled in Hastings' arms. As they reached the cab, Poirot's mind raced. The relic was in his hands, but the killer was steps ahead, and Mrs. Tuttle's betrayal, forced though it was, had shaken him. The edge of despair loomed, but Poirot's resolve hardened. The chapel had yielded its secret, and the final hour was near. He would face the hourglass, whatever the cost, and banish the ghosts of yesterday once and for all. Chapter 10. The Chapel of Secrets. The night was a shroud over Highgate, the chapel's jagged silhouette barely discernible against the starless sky. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings had returned to the abandoned sanctuary, their nerves taut after the harrowing escape with Mrs. Tuttle. The ornate box containing the relic of fate, retrieved from beneath the serpent's gaze, was now locked in Poirot's flat, but its secrets remained sealed. Poirot knew the chapel held more answers, clues to the order of the shattered hour, and the identity of the hourglass, the killer who had eluded him at every turn. Inside, the chapel was colder than before, the air thick with the scent of mildew and ancient stone. Their lantern cast flickering shadows, turning the pews into spectral forms. Poirot's cane tapped softly, his green eyes scanning every detail. The attack on Mrs. Tuttle had confirmed the order's desperation, but it also meant the killer was close, perhaps too close. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice a low murmur. "We search for the order's heart. The relic is but a piece of their power. There must be records, a journal, something to unmask the hourglass." Hastings, clutching a crowbar for protection, nodded grimly. "After what happened to Mrs. Tuttle, I'm not taking chances, but, Poirot, what if the killer's here waiting?" "Then we shall meet them, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching with resolve. "The little grey cells are ready." They moved to the altar, where the serpent carving had revealed the relic's hiding place. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the stone, searching for another hidden compartment. Hastings, meanwhile, explored the walls, tapping for hollow spots. A faint echo drew his attention to a cracked panel behind a rusted candelabrum. "Poirot, over here!" The panel gave way under the crowbar, revealing a narrow alcove. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle, and a collection of faded photographs. Poirot opened the journal, his heart quickening as he recognized the broken hourglass symbol embossed on the cover. The entries, written in a precise hand, detailed the Order's rituals, their obsession with a relic said to bind time itself. One passage stood out. LV was our guardian, but her betrayal shattered us. The relic was hidden, the serpent's mark cursed. The betrayer's blood will restore the Order or destroy it. LV again, Poirot murmured, his mind racing. The photograph from Thorne's study, Lord Harrow, and the mysterious woman flashed in his memory. She was central to their schism, and her fate drives the hourglass. Hastings held up a photograph from the alcove, showing a group in hooded robes, their faces obscured. One figure, smaller than the others, bore a visible tattoo on their wrist. The serpent and hourglass. Could this be LV? He asked. Or the hourglass, Poirot said, his voice tense. The killer seeks to avenge or reclaim something lost. We are close, Hastings, too close. A sudden gust of wind extinguished their lantern, plunging the chapel into darkness. Poirot froze, his hand tightening on his cane. Footsteps echoed, deliberate and slow, from the far end of the nave. A voice, low and venomous, cut through the silence. You should have walked away, Poirot. Hastings fumbled with the lantern, but Poirot's senses sharpened. Show yourself, he called, his tone commanding despite the chill in his bones. The game is over. Hercule Poirot knows your shadow. A figure emerged from the gloom, cloaked and masked, the same silhouette. From the gala. The voice was distorted, but its venom was clear. You think you've won? The relic is nothing without the truth. You failed once, Poirot. Julian Moreau died because of you. You'll fail again. The mention of Moreau struck like a dagger, and Poirot's composure wavered. Moreau? How do you know of him? The figure laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I know everything. You destroyed my family, Poirot. The Order was my refuge, and now I'll bury you with it. They raised a glinting object, a dagger, its hilt engraved with the hourglass symbol. Hastings lunged, crowbar swinging, but the figure was swift, dodging into the shadows. Poirot, heart-pounding, seized the moment. Hastings, the altar! He slammed his cane against the serpent carving, triggering a hidden mechanism. A stone slab shifted, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The figure hesitated, then fled toward the chapel's entrance, their cloak billowing. Poirot and Hastings gave chase, but the rain-slicked ground outside slowed them. The figure vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of their laughter. Breathing heavily, Poirot clutched the journal, its pages now damp. They knew of Moreau, he said, his voice hollow. This is personal, Hastings. The hourglass is no mere cultist. They are a ghost from my past. Hastings, panting, gripped Poirot's shoulder. Who could it be? A relative of Moreau's? Someone from that case? Poirot's? Eyes darkened. Perhaps. The journal will tell us more. But first, we explore below. The staircase. It leads to the Order's sanctum. They returned to the chapel, relighting the lantern. The staircase was steep, its walls carved with hourglass symbols. At its base was a chamber, its floor inlaid with a mosaic of a serpent and hourglass. In the centre stood a stone pedestal, empty but marked with bloodstains, recent by their colour. "The relic was here," Poirot said, his voice echoing. "The hourglass seeks to restore it, or destroy those who betrayed the order. Elvu's fate is the key." As they ascended, Poirot's mind churned. The killer's words had cut deep, linking this case to Moreau's tragedy. The little grey cells were relentless, but the confrontation had shaken him. The hourglass was not just a murderer. They were a mirror, reflecting his deepest fears. The Chapel of Secrets had revealed much, but the final truth remained cloaked, and Poirot knew the next encounter would be his last chance to unmask the killer. Chapter 11. The final gambit. The grand drawing-room of Harrow House was a theatre of shadows, its heavy curtains drawn against the late afternoon light. Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his small frame commanding the space as he faced the assembled suspects. Lady Margaret Harrow, her face a mask of disdain. Clara Harrow, released from custody but pale and guarded. Mrs. Tuttle, recovered from the chapel's dart but trembling. And a handful of others tied to Lord Harrow's life. Business associates, distant cousins, and former allies. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his presence a quiet reassurance, while Inspector Grayson and 2 constables waited in the wings, their scepticism tempered by Poirot's reputation. The journal from the chapel, the medallion, the relic box, and the photograph of Lord Harrow with LV were arrayed on a table before Poirot, each a piece of the puzzle he had painstakingly assembled. The hourglass's taunt in the chapel, "You failed once, Poirot," still stung, but it had sharpened his resolve. The killer was among them, and this was his final gambit to unmask them. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate, "the murders of Lord Harrow, Mr. Thorne, and Mr. Cole are not random acts of violence. They are the work of a mind both cunning and vengeful, driven by a wound that festers from the past. The Order of the Shattered Hour is the heart of this mystery, and today Hercule Poirot will reveal its secrets and its killer." A murmur rippled through the room, but Poirot raised a hand silencing it. "Let us begin with the Order." It was no mere club, but a cult obsessed with a relic they believed could control fate. This relic, he gestured to the ornate box, was hidden in a chapel, guarded by those who bore the serpent's mark. He glanced at Clara, who flinched, her tattooed wrist hidden beneath her sleeve. "Clara Harrow," Poirot continued, "you were drawn into the Order by your uncle, Lord Harrow, but you claim to be a victim, coerced by fear. Yet your meeting in the stable suggests otherwise. Were you spying for the Order, or against them?" Clara's eyes blazed. "I told you, I had no choice. They threatened my aunt, my life. I'm not the killer." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Lady Margaret. "And you, madame, claimed ignorance of the Order. Yet your brother-in-law's obsession was no secret. Did you know of LV, the woman who betrayed the Order and vanished?" Lady Margaret's lips thinned. "I knew of no such woman. Edmund's affairs were his own." "Interessant," Poirot said, producing the photograph. "This is LV, seen with Lord Harrow in 1915. She was the Order's guardian until her betrayal sparked a schism. Her fate is the key to the hourglass's motive." Turned to the journal, its pages open to a damning entry. The Order's records name LV as Lisette Varnier, a scholar who joined their ranks but grew disillusioned. She stole the relic, hoping to destroy the Order's power, and fled. The journal suggests she was hunted, her fate unknown until now. Poirot's eyes swept the room, noting every reaction. The hourglass kills to avenge Lisette's betrayal, or to reclaim the relic. But there is more. The killer spoke of Julian Moreau, a man I failed years ago, linking this case to my past. Only one among you could know of Moreau. A tense silence fell, broken by Mrs. Tuttle's soft sob. Poirot approached her gently. "Madam Tuttle, you were coerced by the Order, threatened with your son's life. But you know more, do you not? Who is the hourglass?" Mrs. Tuttle shook her head, tears streaming. "I can't. They'll kill him." Poirot's voice softened, but his eyes were unrelenting. "Madam, your son is safe. Inspector Grayson has ensured his protection. Speak and end this." Itchioukareuf hesitated, then whispered, "It's Vincent Cole's brother, Roland Cole. He was in the Order, loved Lisette. When she vanished, he blamed Harrow, blamed you all." The room erupted in gasps, but Poirot raised a hand. "Roland Cole, presumed dead after a fire years ago, but alive, hiding in the shadows. He wears the serpent's mark, as Lisette did. His grief and rage drive him to kill. Harrow for betraying Lisette, Thorn for uncovering the Order, Vincent for abandoning the cause. And me?" Poirot's voice faltered. "For failing Moreau, Lisette's cousin, whose death he blames on my arrogance." Grayson stepped forward, incredulous. "Roland Cole? We've no record of him alive. Where is he?" Poirot's gaze locked on the butler, Mr. Grayson, who had been silent, his face pale. "He is here, n'est-ce pas, Monsieur Grayson? Or should I say, Roland Cole? Your limp, your knowledge of the house, your access to secrets, it was you. In the chapel, you who poisoned me at the gala." The butler's eyes widened, then hardened. He lunged for the door, but Hastings and the constables were faster, pinning him down. "You'll never understand," he snarled, his sleeve tearing to reveal the serpent's mark. "Lisette was everything. You let her die, Poirot, just like Moreau." Poirot's heart clenched, but his voice was steady. "I failed Moreau, yes, and for that I carry guilt. But Lisette's fate was not my doing. You have spilled blood for a ghost, Roland." As the constables cuffed Roland, Clara collapsed in tears, and Lady Margaret stared, stunned. Mrs. Tuttle sobbed, relieved her son was safe. Grayson, the inspector, clapped Poirot's shoulder. "You've done it, Poirot. Damned if I know how." Poirot managed a faint smile, but the victory was hollow. Roland's words echoed his own fears, and the relic's power remained a mystery. As the suspects dispersed, Poirot clutched the journal, knowing the final hour was near. The hourglass was caught, but the Order's shadow lingered, and Poirot's battle with his past was far from over. Chapter 12. The Broken Hourglass. The fog that had cloaked London for days began to lift, revealing a city bruised but resilient. Harrow House stood silent, its once oppressive presence softened by the pale sunlight filtering through the clouds. Hercule Poirot stood in the mansion's drawing-room, the same stage where he had unmasked Roland Cole as the hourglass. The relic box, the medallion, and the journal of the Order of the Shattered Hour lay on the table before him, their secrets now laid bare. Yet victory tasted bitter, tinged with the cost of truths uncovered. and the scars of his past. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood by the fireplace, his face a mix of relief and exhaustion. "It's over, Poirot. Roland's in custody. The killings have stopped. You did it, old chap." Poirot's moustache twitched, but his green eyes were distant. "Oui, mon ami, the hourglass is caught. But the Order's shadow lingers, and the little grey cells, they are not at peace." The confrontation with Roland had exposed the full scope of the Order's corruption. Interrogations, aided by Inspector Grayson's newfound respect, revealed the cult's influence among London's elite. Politicians, bankers, even a few Scotland Yard officials had been complicit, drawn by promises of power through the relic, of fate. The relic itself, a crystalline orb etched with the hourglass symbol, was no magical artifact, but a symbol of control, used to manipulate the Order's followers. Its discovery had dismantled the cult, but not without cost. Poirot's gambit had saved lives, including Clara's, who had been cleared of all charges. Her tearful gratitude as she left Harrow House echoed in his mind. "You believed in me, Monsieur Poirot, when no one else did." Yet, the rescue of an innocent could not erase the pain of Roland's accusations. "You let her die, Poirot, just like Moreau." The ghost of Julian Moreau, whose wrongful conviction haunted Poirot, had been stirred anew by this case, and Roland's connection to Lisette Varnier, Moreau's cousin, had made the wound raw. As Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave, Mrs. Tuttle approached, her eyes red but resolute. "Monsieur Poirot, my son's safe because of you. I don't know how to thank you." Poirot bowed slightly, his voice gentle. "Madame, your courage in the chapel was thanks enough. Go to your son and live free of the Order's shadow." She nodded, clutching a handkerchief, and slipped away. Poirot turned to the table, lifting the journal one last time. Its final entry, written by Lisette Varnier, detailed her plan to steal the relic and expose the Order. She had succeeded, but at the cost of her life, hunted down by those she betrayed. Roland, her lover, had survived the fire that claimed her, his grief twisting into a vendetta against Harrow, Thorne, his brother Vincent, and Poirot himself. "Hastings," Poirot said, closing the journal. "The Order believed they could control time, but time is the master of us all." Lisette's courage broke their hourglass, and Roland's rage could not mend it. Hastings frowned, sensing Poirot's melancholy. "You're not yourself, Poirot. You solved the case, saved Clara, stopped a killer. Why the long face?" Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where the lifting fog revealed the city beyond. "Because, mon ami, each victory comes with a price. I saved Clara, yes, but I lost something, a piece of the optimism that once drove me. Roland's words, they were true in part. I failed Moreau, and that failure shaped this tragedy." Hastings stepped closer, his voice firm. "You're human, Poirot. You can't save everyone, but you've saved more than most, and you'll keep on doing it. Don't let the ghosts win." Poirot managed a faint smile, touched by his friend's loyalty. "Merci, Hastings. You are, as always, my anchor." As they stepped outside, the air was crisp, the world reborn in the sunlight. Poirot paused at the gate, glancing back at Harrow House. Its secrets were exposed, its curse lifted, but its echoes would linger in his heart. The relic, now in police custody, would be studied, perhaps destroyed, but its power had been in belief, not reality. A lesson Poirot would not forget. He turned to the street, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Come, Hastings, London awaits, and with it new puzzles. The little grey cells, they do not rest. As they walked away, the mansion faded into the distance, its shadow no longer a threat. The broken hourglass, once a symbol of fear, was now a reminder. Time could wound, but it could also heal. Poirot's heart was heavy, but his resolve was unbroken, ready for whatever mystery the city would bring next. Chapter 13. The Dawn After Darkness. The morning sun cast a golden glow over London, its rays piercing the last wisps of fog that had clung to the city for weeks. Hercule Poirot sat in his modest flat, a cup of tisane steaming on the table, before him its fragrance a quiet comfort. The ordeal of the hourglass killings was over, the order of the shattered hour dismantled, and Roland Cole, the vengeful killer, was behind bars. Yet the victory felt fragile, like a delicate glass that could shatter with a single misstep. The ghosts of Julian Moreau and Lisette Varnier lingered in Poirot's thoughts, their shadows tempered but not banished. Captain Hastings, sprawled in an armchair, flipped through a newspaper, its headlines now praising Poirot's triumph. Poirot cracks hourglass case. He grinned, tossing the paper aside. About time the press gave you your due, Poirot. You're the talk of the town again. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile softening his weary features. The press, mon ami, is a fickle friend. Yesterday they called me a meddler. Today a hero. Tomorrow, pfft, they will find another story. It is the truth that matters, not their chatter. His words carried a weight that Hastings understood. The case had tested Poirot's limits, forcing him to confront his past failures. Most painfully, the wrongful conviction of Julian Moreau. Roland's revelation that Lisette, Moreau's cousin, had been his lover, had tied the hourglass killings to that old tragedy, making each murder a personal blow. Poirot had prevailed, but the cost was a piece of his optimism, a crack in the armour of his confidence. A knock at the door broke the silence. George, the valet, admitted a visitor. Captain Hastings's old friend, now revealed to have been coerced by the order. Hastings had been shaken by the betrayal, believing his friend had turned against them under pressure. Poirot, however, had suspected the truth, and his intervention with Inspector Grayson had secured the friend's release. "Hastings," the man said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you everything. They threatened my family. I had no choice. I'm sorry." Hastings clapped him on the shoulder, his face a mix of relief and forgiveness. "It's over, old chap. You're free, and that's what counts. Just no more secret societies, eh?" Poirot watched the exchange, his heart warmed by Hastings' loyalty. "Monsieur, you were a pawn in the order's game, as many were. Go now, and live without fear." As the man left, Poirot rose and crossed to the window, gazing at the bustling street below. London was alive, its pulse strong despite the darkness it had endured. He thought of Clara Harrow, now rebuilding her life, and Mrs. Tuttle reunited with her son. Their gratitude was a light in the gloom, but Poirot's mind turned to deeper questions. The relic of fate, now in a Scotland Yard vault, had been a symbol of control, not power. Had the Order's belief in it been their downfall, or a mirror of humanity's own delusions? "Hastings," he said, turning, "this case has made me question the balance of justice and mercy. We seek truth, yes, but at what cost? Each answer we uncover wounds someone. Roland, Clara, even myself." Hastings frowned, his honesty cutting through Poirot's melancholy. "You're too hard on yourself, Poirot. You saved lives, stopped a killer, and broke a cult. That's not nothing. As for the cost, well, isn't that why you keep going? To make it worth something?" Poirot's eyes softened, touched by his friend's clarity. "Oui, mon ami. You remind me why I persist. The little grey cells, they are not alone. They have you." A second knock announced George with a letter, its envelope bearing a familiar wax seal. Poirot opened it, his pulse quickening as he read the brief note. "Monsieur Poirot, a matter of urgency requires your genius. Meet me at the Ritz, 8 p.m. A Sinclair." Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Another case already? You've barely caught your breath." Poirot folded the note, a spark of determination igniting in his eyes. "The world does not pause, Hastings, nor do the little grey cells. We rest, we reflect, but we do not stop." As they prepared to leave, Poirot glanced at the table where the photograph of Lord Harrow and Lisette Varnier lay. He tucked it into his pocket, a reminder of the lives he could not save, but also of those he had. The dawn after darkness was not without hope, and though his heart bore new scars, it beat with purpose. The door closed behind them, and London stretched out, a city of mysteries waiting. Poirot's cane tapped a steady rhythm, each step a promise, to face the next challenge, to chase the truth, and to honour the dawn that followed even the darkest hour.